clearly the risk of a miscalculation is very, very high. And therefore it is a very worrying situation. We've been here before, most recently, I think, in 1996, when again they expressed their strong displeasure about the visit of the then president of Taiwan to the USA. On that occasion, President Clinton sent two carrier task forces into the Taiwan Straits as a show of strength that effectively persuaded or forced the Chinese to back off. But that was a bit of a humiliating climb down for the Chinese. And ever since then, they've wanted to make sure that they wouldn't be forced to climb down. I think everybody has to be worried about it. It's obviously a very tense situation. China has used and regularly uses emotive language like this whenever something or somebody visits Taiwan that exercises their displeasure. But this time, with the number of exercises we're seeing the PLA conducting in response, clearly the risk of a miscalculation is very, very high. And therefore it is a very worrying situation. We've been here before, most recently, I think, in 1996, when again they expressed their strong displeasure about the visit of the then president of Taiwan to the USA. On that occasion, President Clinton sent two carrier task forces into the Taiwan Straits as a show of strength that effectively persuaded or forced the Chinese to back off. But that was a bit of a humiliating climb down for the Chinese. And ever since then, they've wanted to make sure that they wouldn't be forced to climb down. And what we're seeing now, as much as anything, is a very great show of strength by the PLA to say to the US, don't try doing again what you did in 1996.
You know the country very well. How do the people of Taiwan see themselves on the international stage? Because it's a very complicated picture, really, in terms of how different countries view and different institutions view Taiwan. How do they see themselves?
Well, quite simply, they see themselves as Taiwanese. They are overwhelmingly ethnic Chinese. But if you ask probably about 90% of them, do they consider themselves Chinese first, Chinese so only purely Chinese, Chinese first and Taiwan second, or Taiwanese and Chinese? They would say either they are just Taiwanese or they are Taiwanese first, Chinese second.
And what do they make of, what do you think they'll be making of what is currently going on, the kind of military exercises that have been going on over the last year or so, the strong words that are coming from Beijing? Do you think they'll be alarmed or not?
They mixed feelings. Yes, they will be very worried by this, but at the same time, it's something of the fact of life for them that, after all, they've been used to Chinese bellicose rhetoric for pretty much the most of the last 70 years. And at times that has become sort of actual shelling or live firing. So yes, they're alarmed, but at the same time, I think that's why they are so pleased that Nancy Pelosi has visited, because as they see it, she is standing up for their isolation. She is refusing to be cowed or bullied.
Do you think that the US and UK position on Taiwan is clear enough?
The position until now for both of them has been deliberately ambiguous, not least because that has actually suited the interests of everybody. But what we have seen over the last about 8 years since Xi Jinping came to office in Beijing has been a steady sort of pushing, if you like, at this historic ambiguity by China itself. And to a certain extent, the US is reacting to that. The UK position remains rather more ambiguous, perhaps, than the US one.
What is your understanding of the current UK position?
So the UK position, well, formally, it's the same as the US position. The UK acknowledges, and that word is used very carefully, it was chosen after a long debate, but acknowledges the Chinese position that Taiwan is part of China. So formally, privately, legally, neither the US nor the UK, nor indeed various other countries like Canada, Australia, actually accept that Taiwan is a part of China. But they don't publicly say that.
Right. And you can see when there is, ambiguity, clearly there are going to be problems going forward. What does Nancy Pelosi's visit change, if anything?
That's a good question. In terms of facts, it doesn't actually change anything at all. After all, there is a precedent. Newt Gingrich, as Speaker of the House, visited Taiwan about 25 years ago. The Chinese red lines in terms of visits are they would not want to see the president of the US or the vice president or the Secretary of State or the Defense Secretary or their immediate deputies visit Taiwan. The red lines are expressed clearly in terms of heads of state and government, foreign affairs and defense. Now, Nancy Pelosi doesn't fall into those categories, but clearly, given her position in the US hierarchy, she is very high up in Chinese eyes.